Hello and welcome to this Advective weather video. We have a dangerous situation today across parts of the Midwest with a strong tornado risk in place. The threat will spread to the mid-Atlantic tomorrow with additional strong wind and damaging hail threat across the mid-south to deep south today. There is an enhanced risk for today and tomorrow across the regions I've mentioned. All hazards today, primarily damaging winds in the mid-Atlantic tomorrow. Focusing on today, storms will be capable of producing strong, that's EF2 plus tornadoes, hurricane force winds and giant hail across a large area. You can see that enhanced risk comes from the Arkansas-Oklahoma border all the way through Mississippi and then up to the Michigan-Indiana-Ohio border. That's a very large area and there's a lot of people in the risks today. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, the threat will be damaging severe thunderstorm winds with the additional risk of large hail and a couple of tornadoes. Now looking at the setup today, you can see that it's being driven by that very long cold front stemming from that low over Wisconsin. This system will be moving slowly, but providing forcing for powerful storms across the region, as it remains roughly in the same location. And there's your view of the whole United States. There's some marginal risks off in the mountain west, but the main focus is of course that enhanced risk. Zooming in a bit further, you can see that Columbus, Cincinnati, Louisville, Jackson, Kentucky, Paducah, Nashville, Huntsville, Knoxville, Memphis, Birmingham, Little Rock, and just off-screen Jackson, Mississippi. Those are some big cities that are in the enhanced or slight regions, and I think I forgot to mention Indianapolis, Indiana. Grand Rapids, Michigan in the slight risk as well. But no major cities in Missouri or Illinois are in the slight plus risk today. Atlanta just on the edge of the slight and marginal risk, but the main focus is in the northern part of that where there is a strong tornado risk, including Louisville and Cincinnati. Dangerous setup today. People need to be paying attention to warnings, and in Tornado Watch has just gone out stating the possibility for a couple of intense tornadoes, not just EF2+, that's EF3+. These are the sorts of tornadoes that will pick up a mobile home or a manufactured home and shred it to pieces before impaling on some trees. You do not want to be in any unsafe structures if a tornado warning is issued today. Your life could depend upon getting to a safe structure. If there is no sturdy building nearby, that will be the lowest point, preferably a ditch. You don't want to hide under a highway overpass. You do not want to be in a car unless there is no better option nearby. But it may be better to be in your car and try and get away from the tornado than to stay in a mobile home. They are death traps in a tornado. That entire thing will just become, well, a load of debris that will injure you and unfortunately has caused a lot of fatalities. So stay out of mobile homes. If you're in a tornado warning and you're in a mobile home, get out of it. Go to a nearby shop, go to a nearby store, go to a friend's house if you know someone that lives in a sturdy building, or if there's a storm shelter nearby, go to that when you're in a warning today. Of course, there is also the threat of hurricane force winds in those hatch risk areas that includes Little Rock, Arkansas, Memphis, Tennessee, and again, the region that's under threat for strong tornadoes across Indiana, Ohio, and north-central Kentucky. There's also the threat for very large hail up to apple size or maybe even larger throughout the same areas. Again, that's eastern Oklahoma through to far western Tennessee, including much of Arkansas and parts of Mississippi, and then from south-central Kentucky up into Michigan. Again, an all-hazards threat today, very dangerous situation. Please pay attention to warnings. As you can see, these storms are expected to fire off explosively in the next couple of hours with the potential for strong tornadoes throughout that hatched risk region that I showed you earlier. And then these will congeal into a line with a greater focus on damaging wind threat, although some spin-up tornadoes will of course also be possible. Farther south, the storms will fire at about the same time across Arkansas, maybe a couple of hours later than you see here. And then those will also continue to steadily move eastward with primarily a damaging wind threat down there. The tornado threat is expected to be limited, at least, to Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio. Moving on to tomorrow, that cold front really doesn't move very much. It moves from Illinois, Indiana today to Ohio, which means that there's going to be less forcing for the storms tomorrow. But that's not to say the threat will be less, at least in terms of the wind. At this time, there's an enhanced risk in place for the Mid-Atlantic with a slight risk across the high plains. And if you zoom in closer, we can see that Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Richmond, Norfolk, Raleigh, Greensboro, those are the main urban areas in the enhanced risk. Of course, New York in the slight risk, Wilmington, Charlotte, Columbia, Roanoke, those are in the slight risk. A low tornado threat at this time, but it could be upgraded, and of course, even with a 2% risk, you can get some substantial tornadoes. You can't rule out an EF2 at this time of year, so be aware and do the safe thing if you're in a warning tomorrow. Now, the main threat is strong winds at this time. There isn't a hatched risk at this time, but given that we're 2 days out, there very well could be an upgrade to a hatched risk tomorrow. Moderate risk isn't out of the question, but we'd have to see something change in the models for that. At this point, it doesn't seem likely, so an enhanced risk is what we have at the moment. That's what we'll continue dealing with. Widespread, damaging winds with the capability to knock down trees, which of course can cause problems, and there could be some hurricane force winds mixed in with those storms, so pay attention to the warnings. And if you're in a particularly destructive severe thunderstorm warning, treat it as if it's a tornado warning and seek shelter immediately. There could also be some large hail tomorrow. There isn't a hatched risk yet, but they're talking about it as if there may be upgrade to a hatched risk of large hail tomorrow. At this time, expect isolated large hail greater than 2 inches, but most of it should be maybe 1 to 1.5 inches. And look at the models for tomorrow. You can see the storms from today dying out in the early morning hours, and then nothing for a bit. The storms don't continue. It's new storms firing across the eastern United States tomorrow. This is what's driving the threat, and as you can see, they're much more clustered, much more linear. There isn't as much powerful, discrete storms as we're seeing today, which is why the tornado threat is a lot lower, and during the evening hours, they should move out over the open Atlantic. Maybe into the overnight hours for some places. They could persist for quite a long way into the night, maybe up to midnight in Georgia and South Carolina. And of course, you should know what to do when the storms come. If you're new to an area where you see tornadoes and you come from somewhere they're not used to them, we have a full guide on what to do in severe weather that will be in the link in the description. Of course, if you know someone from the area, you can ask them for help too. Most important thing is to stay safe and have a way to receive warnings and know where you're going to go if a tornado warning is issued for you today. Once again, the main threat area is portions of Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. And if you're in that hatched risk, if you're in the tornado watch, you need to be aware from this point onwards until the storms move out of your area later tonight. We hope we've been helpful. Thank you very much for watching, and wherever you are in the world, please stay safe. Goodbye.